It is Friday, the 12th day of January 2024. A very good afternoon and welcome to the News International Edition. We are coming to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm Emma Akwero. We start with the latest update on the Sudan unrest. Bombardments in the Sudanese capital has killed at least 33 civilians on Thursday, most of them in airstrikes, pro-democracy lawyers said overnight on Thursday. The group had announced earlier Thursday that artillery fire killed 10 civilians in a residential area of Khartoum, where the army and paramilitary rapid support forces have been at war since April. We now move away from Sudan and head over to Gaza, where mourners gathered in Deir el-Bahar for funerals of medics, which the Palestinian Red Crescent said were killed in an Israeli strike on an ambulance in the central Gaza Strip. The Israeli military denied it had bombed an ambulance a day earlier, which killed 4 medics and 2 other people.
The Israeli military on Thursday denied it was behind the bombing of an ambulance in the central Gaza Strip a day earlier, which killed 4 medics and 2 other people. A review was conducted based on the details provided to the Israeli military, which shows that no strike was carried out in the described area, the army said in a statement. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society had said 6 people were killed Wednesday in an Israeli strike on their ambulance at the entrance to the Deir el-Bahar area of central Gaza. The roof of the ambulance was completely destroyed and part of the vehicle crashed, photos show. Jagan Chapagan, the head of the International Federation for Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies, called the attack unacceptable in a social media post and said, "I strongly condemn their killing." Crowds of mourners gathered Thursday for the funerals of the medics, a shredded and bodied Palestinian Red Crescent uniform placed atop one of the white shrouds. The Red Crescent said the ambulance had been on Salah al-Din Road, a highway running north-south through the Gaza Strip that has in the past been used by thousands of Palestinians fleeing the Israeli military advance. Earlier on Wednesday afternoon, the health ministry in the Hamas-run Gaza said multiple people were killed in an Israeli strike near a hospital in Deir el-Bahar. Over 23,350 people have been killed, mostly civilians, in more than 3 months of war between Hamas and Israel, according to the latest Gaza Health Ministry toll. The war erupted with the bloody Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, which resulted in around 1,140 deaths in Israel, mostly civilians, according to an AFP tally based on official figures. The Israeli military says 186 soldiers have since been killed in fighting in Gaza.
Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that any pauses in his country's defense against Russia's invasion would only help Moscow. Speaking in Tallinn, Estonia, on the second leg of a Baltic tour aimed at strengthening support for Ukraine's almost 2-year-long fight against Russia, Zelensky said a break in fighting would just allow Moscow to take over.
It's just a pause to help them. They don't have time. Yes, you are right, the world also does not have time to fill Ukraine's warehouses. But despite all that, today the world helps Ukraine and Russia has a deficit. We can see how this deficit affects their resilience on the battlefield. Give a break, take a risk, give the Russian Federation 2 to 3 years, well, they'll simply run over us. Zelensky said that a long war would also not be good for Ukraine, asserting that Ukraine remains against the war, which was from the first day and will be its position until the last. Zelensky said Kyiv deserves an invitation to join NATO, saying its army would strengthen the bloc's eastern flank. Ukraine has a strong army that will definitely strengthen particularly Eastern Europe, NATO countries, an army with military experience, not theory but practice, and an army which used NATO weapons during the war on the battlefield and not only in military training. We see what they lack and that they have a big deficit in both drones and artillery, a big deficit in missiles as well. It's not by chance that there are large purchases from Iran Shahid drones, and they are also discussing missiles. So far, they have not reached an agreement, and they also received several, more than 1 million artillery shells from North Korea. President Zelensky believes the bloc would gain an army with military experience, not theory but practice. Ukraine has expressed some frustration towards Western allies for the lack of a time frame to join the Western Security Alliance. Zelensky arrived in Tallinn overnight along with his foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba. Estonia, one of Ukraine's main allies and a NATO member, has called for continued support for Kyiv as some allies waver. Democratic countries have done a lot to assist Ukraine, but we must collectively do more to ensure Ukraine wins and the aggressor is defeated, said Estonia's leader Karis. He added that there is hope that this will be the last military aggression in Europe. Estonia's foreign minister Magas Takna said on social media that the country will give a strong message and confirmation to Ukraine that Estonia stands firmly by their side and together we will win this war. Zelensky appealed for badly needed air defense systems when he began his tour on Wednesday in Lithuania, warning that Western hesitation on aid for Ukraine was emboldening Russia. Zelensky will end his tour of the 3 Baltic nations, all former Soviet republics, and his staunch allies in Latvia.
Still in Ukraine, 2 Russian missiles have struck a hotel in the country's second largest city, Kharkiv, injuring 13 people, including foreign journalists, local authorities said on Thursday. The strikes on Wednesday evening came as both Moscow and Kyiv accused each other of inflicting dozens of civilian casualties in a sharp escalation of attacks. 13 people were injured, including a Turkish citizen and a Georgian, the prosecutor general's office said. One of the wounded is in very serious condition, he said, adding that Turkish journalists are among the victims. The Kharkiv Regional Military Administration said S-300 missiles were fired from the Russian frontier region of Belgorod, adding that a 35-year-old man was hospitalized in serious condition. Several other buildings, including 2 apartment blocks, were also reported damaged in the latest strike. In addition to the hotel, residential buildings were affected, 1 communal, 1 private, a car dealership, and a manufacturing enterprise, Mayor Terekov said. Located about 30 kilometers from the Russian border, Ukraine's second largest city has seen regular and often deadly aerial assaults. Across the border, the Russian Defense Military said it had downed 4 Ukrainian drones over the Tula, Kaluga, and Rostov regions. Voronezh region governor Alexander Gusev also reported that a Ukrainian drone had hit the roof of a non-residential building overnight, although they said there was no one who was harmed. Now, the U.S. Defense Department has not fully complied with monitoring requirements for about $1 billion in military aid provided to Ukraine, the Pentagon Inspector General's office said on Thursday. The finding is likely to provide help or support for the Republican politicians who oppose additional aid for Kyiv. But the Pentagon also said that there is no evidence that military assistance provided to Kyiv has been illicitly diverted.
This time, there remains no credible evidence of illicit diversion of U.S.-provided advanced conventional weapons from Ukraine. We do see some instances of Russia continuing to spread disinformation to the contrary, but the fact is, as we observe the Ukrainians employing these capabilities on the battlefield, we're seeing them use them effectively for all the obvious reasons, in that Russia continues to present a significant threat. While we do have that $4.2 billion in authority, we don't have the funds available to us to replenish those stocks should we expend that. And with no timeline in sight, we have to make those hard decisions. And so the most important thing right now is securing additional funding from Congress, and we'll continue to work closely with them on this important international security issue.
This shortfall can be explained by factors including the limited number of U.S. personnel at logistics hubs in a partner nation and in Ukraine, and restrictions on the movement of monitoring personnel in the country, the statement said. When a serial number inventory is conducted, officials view the item and write down or scan its barcode, then update that information in a database, according to an official from the Inspector General's office. The full Inspector General's report says that high rates of delinquency may correlate with an inability to maintain complete accountability of the EEUM-designated defense articles, which in turn may increase the risk of theft or diversion. Equipment that has been provided to Kyiv and which requires enhanced end-use monitoring includes Javelin anti-tank weapons, Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, and Switchblade one-way attack drone. Pentagon spokesman Major General Pat Ryder told journalists Thursday there has been no sign of misuse of the aid Washington has provided. There remains no credible evidence of illicit diversion of U.S.-provided advanced conventional weapons from Ukraine, he said. Washington has spearheaded the push for international support for Ukraine since Russia invaded in February 2022, forging a coalition to back the country and coordinating tens of billions of dollars in aid that has helped Kyiv's forces push Moscow's troops back. While U.S. authorities have authorization to withdraw more military equipment for Ukraine from American stockpiles, we don't have the funds available to us to replenish those stocks, Ryder said. Republicans have refused to authorize new budget outlays for Ukraine unless Democrats first agree to sweeping, tough new measures to curb illegal immigration and tighten the asylum process.
Now, the oldest and entirely hand-sewn boat on the Mediterranean Sea is preparing for its next journey after having sat undisturbed on Croatia's Adriatic seafloor for millennia. But this time the vessel, whose planks were actually hand-sewn together, will travel by land to France for conservation.
Discovered in the waters of Croatia's northwestern Istria Peninsula, the Zambratija boat dates back to the period between late 12th and late 10th century BC, the transition period from the Bronze to the Iron Age, analysis showed. That makes her the oldest entirely sewn boat found in the Mediterranean so far, experts say. She's the prototype of all 64 sewn boats discovered in the Mediterranean, said underwater archaeologist Ida Kokani-Uhak of the Archaeological Museum of Istria, who led the research. It is a rare example of the ancient shipbuilding tradition of Istria and Dalmatia, said experts from France's CNRS, which is collaborating with the Croatian team on the project. It was a local fisherman who alerted archaeologists to the remains of the wooden boat, scientists locating the site in 2008. The wreck, of which one frame and 5 planks were partly visible, was only about 150 meters from the shore, 2.5 meters down, covered with seaweeds and sand. The anoxic properties of the sea mud protected it from oxygen, which would have allowed harmful bacteria to develop that would have destroyed the wood, say experts. The village, which sits off the bay where the boat was discovered, gave the vessel its name. The village, which sits off the bay where the boat was discovered, gave the vessel its name. Originally around 10 meters long, only a third of the vessel remains. At first, scientists first thought it was a Roman-era boat made with an ancient technique in which planks are sewn together with tendons, wood roots, or vegetal fibers. A few other such boats have already been found in the Adriatic. But to their surprise, analysis of the wood samples using radiocarbon dating carried out in Croatia, the US and France all dated her much further back, said Kokani-Uhak. Before the scientists eventually decided to take it out of the water, a delicate operation that took place last July, the wreck was protected with a metal construction. This Zambratija was eventually recovered in 15 separate fragments, which were transported to a museum hangar. There, they were cleaned, analyzed and tagged before being put in a specifically constructed pool to desalinate.
And finally, from the continent of Africa, the Congo's river has burst its banks, causing widespread flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa, with dark, foul-smelling water pouring into homes across working-class neighborhoods and affecting local businesses in the central African megacity. Vast riverbanks are causing turmoil in DR Congo's capital Kinshasa, with dark and foul-smelling water pouring into homes across working-class neighborhoods in the Central African city's mega city.
The impoverished metropolis of some 15 million people sits on the Congo River, the second largest in Africa after the Nile, which has swollen to near record levels over the past several weeks. Kinshasa is crisscrossed with small rivers and waterways which often double as open sewers. Many have now overflown. Nikleti Luzolo, a 32-year-old hairdresser in Pompeng, said her house had completely flooded. We were born here, and this is our plot with 4 shops that help us with the children's school fees. This water overflows without it really raining. Water often overflows, but this time it overflowed badly. We have children and a plot of land, but we are homeless. In the district of Pompey, a bridge over one such small river has been completely submerged, creating a stinking and stagnant pool in the middle of a residential district. The water used to come up to our knees, but now it's up to our chests. I had the ingenuity to think of installing a pirogue, and now I have 3. We are supporting the government because they are waiting for the water to recede before they build a bridge here. Flooding is common in the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, but locals say that this year is the worst. In late December, the agency that manages the DRC's waterways, the RVF, warned of exceptional flooding along the Congo River and its tributaries. Measurements taken in Kinshasa indicated that the river had risen 5.94 meters, close to the high water mark of 6.26 meters during record flooding in 1961. The Congo River Basin floods every year between December and mid-January, according to RVF Director Daniel Raboshi. With that communique, the whole population was alerted and understood that it was dangerous. This meant that not everyone had enough time to evacuate their homes, but at least everyone had time to take shelter, and that's good news for us. Water levels normally rise above 5 meters, he said, but the current levels have been high enough to submerge most of the quays and ports along the river. This prevents boats from docking and goods from moving between the capital and the interior of the country, which is mostly only accessible by river or air. The director said that heavier downpours linked to climate change in part led to the exceptionally high river. But the hand of man is also involved, he said, explaining that deforestation hardens the earth and makes it less absorbent of water. Runaway construction in floodplains in overcrowded cities such as Kinshasa also play a role, Raboshi added. Modern developments, nevertheless, appear to be just as affected. It is not clear how many people have been affected by the floods in the DRC, but it is thought to be in the hundreds of thousands.
And that's all the international news we had for you this week. We'll be back again on Monday at 4 p.m. Thank you for watching. Do have yourselves a splendid weekend.